Follow your heart, but take your mind with you. You don't need to drop your brain at the door just because you are following your intuition. And a question that can often come up for folks is, but my mind says one thing, but I feel like my intuition says something else. So how do I know what to do with that? How do I reconcile these two things? If you would like to answer that question yourself, stick around because that is what we are going to get to the bottom of today. Welcome back to Ponder and Practice. I am Dr. Catherine Hoffman, and I walk the middle line between this kind of spiritual intuition, heart-centered kind of thing, and also logic. To begin with, let's talk about why we end up with a conflict between intuition and the mind. There are 3 reasons that I have thought of. If you've thought of others, certainly leave them below in the comments. I would love to hear what you think. The first that I have is conditioning. We pick up a lot of beliefs from the world around us, beliefs about how we should behave, how our lives should look, how the world should work. This affects how our mind works and how our mind thinks about things. The second reason I think that there can be a conflict here is because there is necessarily a lack of information. We can't predict the future. You're standing on one side of a change, you're on this side of a transformation. You don't know how it's going to look down the road on the other side. And so that is scary. And with that fear, the mind tends to get very busy to try to fill in those empty gaps, to try to fill in the spaces that we just can't fill yet because we haven't lived it yet. And the information that the brain often uses, or the mind often uses, to fill in those gaps are conditioned beliefs, right? So see point 1. Other piece to be aware of in terms of information or lack thereof, most information just doesn't make it into conscious awareness. The brain filters out about 99.9% of all of the information that our bodies get. So the mind really doesn't have all the facts. The body does. The body has taken in a bunch of info. It knows a lot more than we know consciously, which is why there can be that discrepancy because just information hasn't made it into the brain where we would want it to be able to make a good logical decision. And this is also a good argument to learn to trust your intuition because it's a body-based knowing and your body has so much more information. Because of these 2 factors of not being able to predict the future and not having all the information, the mind becomes fearful. And with this fear, that kind of separates the mind even more from the body. We want our mind and our body to be on one page, but when we become afraid and fearful, the mind just gets so busy. And I encourage you to notice in moments when you are scared as opposed to moments when you're peaceful, what is your mind doing? What do you notice your thoughts are? This can be difficult to do when you're afraid because you're afraid, but if you have times where you are a little bit more anxious, notice does that mental activity kind of kick up a little bit? This can be a really good clue. Particularly if you sometimes have a hard time identifying your emotions, if you can start to notice, oh my gosh, my brain is just running. Am I anxious about something? And then you can kind of walk back from there. So how then do we resolve the 2, right? We have our mind on one page, we have our brain on the other page. We want to bring them together, get everybody moving in the same direction. The first step, of course, is awareness. You want to recognize, oh yeah, my body and my brain are on different pages because I'm conditioned to think certain things, and also because I don't have all the information. Just knowing that can go a long way to bridging that gap between the 2. You also want to learn to be aware of your own conditioning. None of us are immune from this. We all have been conditioned to think different things. From a human design perspective, if you look at your chart, you'll see that some centers are colored in and some centers are white. The centers that are white are called undefined centers. And these are the places where conditioning tends to get to us most intensely because these are places where we don't have a steady, reliable way of being. Sometimes you can't see the forest for the trees because you're too close. And so having that as a tool can be helpful to start to delineate, oh, I notice when this thought comes up of I don't have enough time, or this thought comes up of I have to do everything right now, or this thought comes up of I need to know the answer, I need to have logic. These kinds of things, we can then identify, oh, this is because conditioning, because the root is undefined, or the head is undefined, or the throat is undefined, what have you. Another great tool of awareness is just to recognize when your mind is really busy. What is it really busy about, and what is driving that? Is there a problem you're trying to solve? Is there something that you're anxious about that you don't know what to do about? Is there something that happened that you just, keeps turning over in your mind? Noticing what drives that process can be really helpful because you can start to say, okay, like this is just a pattern thought. Most of us have thought patterns that are just so repetitive and honestly boring. And once you can start to identify them and notice, oh yeah, this is just the thought that I have when this thing happens. This is just the thought that I have when there's traffic. Okay, this is just the thought that I have when I don't know what to make for dinner tonight. You can start to take the mental charge out of things a little bit. The second tool to bridge intuition and the mind is to practice body awareness. Our bodies know so much more than we give them credit for. And so we want to be able to tune in to be able to gather that information, which is sensory information. Can you name an emotion that you're experiencing? Now, if you are quiet for a moment, close your eyes and feel into your body, what sensations are there? There might be a color associated, there might be a texture that you're feeling. Some folks will note that different emotions will feel like sticky, kind of like tarry, like they can't get it off. Some emotions will feel kind of like bouncy and bright. Some emotions may feel like more ridged or smooth or bumpy, all these kinds of things. You can start to do this when you're feeling calm and peaceful, just to kind of get in the habit and see what that feels like. When you're feeling angry, when you're feeling scared. How about when you're feeling happy or excited? How do those sensations change based on these different emotions? The other piece here is to notice when you make decisions, how does your body feel? Do you feel settled? Do you feel unsettled? Do you feel jittery? Do you feel energized or do you feel sleepy? Noticing how you feel when you make a decision, then notice what was the outcome of that decision. So if you made a decision where you felt really calm and sort of at peace and things were going well, was the outcome of that decision good and peaceful, or did chaos result from it? If you made a decision when you were angry or upset or afraid, what was the outcome of that decision? And then you can start to correlate, oh, this sensation makes sense for, like, if I want this kind of outcome, I need to make sure I'm not making decisions when I'm in this particular state. The third tool is to have an open dialogue with your mind. Ask yourself questions like, how do you know that that's true? When we are afraid or anxious, it's a really good question to ask. How do you know that that's true? How do you know that what's scaring you is actually scary? How do you know that that's actually dangerous? There may be super valid reasons. There may not be, but you don't know, and you can't, it's much more difficult to pull yourself out of that state if you can't first ask yourself the question, well, how do I know that this is actually what's going on? And it's not just an emotion, but something that I am creating as opposed to something that exists in the world. Another question you might want to ask yourself is, what's possible here? This can be a fun one because it opens the door to creativity. It opens the door to, if you really ask it, like, what is possible here? Probably much more than you're currently thinking. And I really like that question for that reason, because it does open the door into many more options than we maybe think are available to us at the moment. A third question to ask would be, what information do I not have? When we're thinking about intuitive decisions and logic and bridging the mind and the body, it's important to recognize and to sort of soothe the mind with the fact that, yeah, I don't know this. I don't know what's going to happen if I pick up and move to Tennessee. I can't predict. Who's to say? I don't know what's going to happen if I engage in this conversation that I'm nervous about. Acknowledging what you don't know, and can you gather that information? Just because you don't have it doesn't mean you can't get it. No, you'll never be able to predict the future, but you probably can look at, okay, what's the employee turnover rate at this particular company that I'm looking at moving to? What's the average cost of living in Atlanta? There are pieces of information that you can gather that can soothe the mind and calm down the, oh, no, like that panic that can happen for a lot of folks. The fourth tool is to practice using your intuition so that you can build confidence in it. If the mind can see, oh, we've done this before. Yeah, that went really well last time. Let's do that again. Game changer. Super game changer. Start with things that are small, of course, to build that up as you go over time, and you can build up to bigger and bigger decisions. But start with small things like ordering off a menu, how you're going to drive to work, what you're going to get at the grocery store this week. Maybe you want to walk your dog at a different time or take a different route. Maybe you're kind of sitting around one day and you're like, oh, I should call this friend I haven't talked to in a long time. These kinds of things are really fun ways to start to build up that intuitive knowing. It may be nothing comes of it. That's fine. It may be you start to build up this really interesting library of experiences of synchronicities and things that happen. You're like, huh, that's kind of cool and interesting. That goes a long way to start to quiet the mind. If nothing happens, that's fine. You're still doing something new. You're still trying something new out. And that is really interesting and fun in and of itself. A step that you might need to do prior to this one, I talk with a lot of folks who don't trust themselves at all. They're like, no, I can't do that. I don't know. Like, I don't know what to do. I don't know anything about anything. Are you kidding me? So a prior step to this might be to build up your confidence to start with so that you can start to experience intuition in the first place. You can do this by following through on your word to yourself. It doesn't have to be big things. It can be little things. It can be as simple as, I am going to make my dinner at home today. I'm not going to stop on the way home to get a snack. I'm just going to have dinner when I get home. Simple, right? Or it can be something like, I'm just going to bring my water bottle with me to the office. I'm not going to make a commitment about drinking the water, nothing like that. I just got to remember I'm going to put it in my bag the night before, take it with me. This may sound like super dumb and absurd, but truly following through on your word to yourself in small ways makes it much easier to start to follow through on your word to yourself in bigger ways. This builds confidence over time, and this also opens the door to being able to hear and trust and use your intuition. And then you can start to put it all together. Take note of a situation that happened. What did your mind say about it? What were the thoughts that you were having about it? What were the physical sensations that you were having about it? What did you do, if anything? Did you make a decision? Did you engage in a conversation? Did you decide not to talk to somebody? Did you, whatever it is? And then what was the outcome? This helps to build a sense of coherence between the mind, the body, decisions, and outcomes so that you can start to see that through line between all of these things, which is tremendously helpful when we're talking about bridging that gap between the mind and the body. All of that said, human design can be a great tool not only to figure out your conditioning and why is your mind as loud as it is, but also in your intuitive and decision-making process. Each type has a different method for making decisions. We call strategy and authority, and it's unique to all of us and can show up in myriad different ways. And if you are interested in leveraging that and using that to really enhance your life, your decision-making process, and bridging this gap between the intuition and the mind, between the body and the mind, go ahead and check out. There's a link in the description for a virtual human design reading. You receive a bespoke, it's usually at least 60 to 65 pages of information that is unique to you. It includes information not only on strategy and authority, but every single aspect of the chart. It is very comprehensive and provides very practical, down-to-earth, this is how to use this information in your day-to-day life so that hopefully you can develop, build, expand a life that you really love waking up to. I would love to hear from you. What do you think about intuition and the mind and this gap that can develop? Do you have issues with this yourself? Is this something that you kind of figured out? How did you figure it out? I'd love to know that. Are there other tools that you have found useful in this process, or is it just a bunch of bunk and you're like, yeah, intuition is stupid, I don't want anything to do with that? That's super valid as well. I'd love to hear from you in the comments below, so definitely let me know. Anyway, that is all I have for you today. It is, as ever, such a pleasure and an honor to share this time and space with you. Thanks so much for hanging out. Do hit the subscribe button if you are still here. Also, if you enjoyed this type of content, let me know that. I am sort of figuring out what direction the channel should go, and obviously can't do that without you and would love to have your input there as well. So, all that said, all the best, and until next time, take care.